Republicans have been very, very successful in scapegoating a lot of problems to immigrants. Like
I agree
if
with
you
that.
can't find a job, then it must be the immigrant's fault. If you
Yeah.
can't get your government guaranteed turkey, it must be the government, or it must be the immigrant's fault. If I can't
Again,
get my application
I'm
accepted for
not
this apartment, it must be the
reiterating what
immigrant's
I
fault.
heard. I'm telling you from experience.
So,
So
but
just
you're
once
not.
it
But you're
came
not
right
though.
there.
You're not
To be
though.
very fair,
You're
Damien.
saying that you didn't get this job because thousands of
I have a
immigrants were.
bachelor's degree.
I
The
understand
first time
that.
in my life, I wasn't able to get a job.
Are you telling
in
me that?
over a year?
But are you telling me that 11,000 illegal immigrants with bachelor's degrees were clogging up the application for that job, or do you think that was just like an overstimulated market?
Court case. She's been to everything, done, filed everything she was supposed to. Now they just tell her she gotta wait.
That
And
really breaks my heart, man.
our disabled child needs to see how is she supposed to go to therapy and do all these things. My wife got to make a tough decision. Are we going to spend $50 in an Uber, or is she going to take the car and drive illegally? Excuse me.
Okay, you're kind of on my side, so I can't really argue with anything you're saying. I feel bad for you. At the end of the day, I'm sorry that it's the way the country is being kind of turned into right now. I don't know how to say your name.
Rinyald.
Rinyald?
Rinyald.
Rinyald. Okay.
Yeah.
What is your take on deportation?
I think some kinds of deportation are obviously good. If there's somebody who's violent, then we should be getting them out of here. But I think the kind of deportations that we're seeing right now are kind of stupid, kind of misguided, and doesn't really actually fix any problem.
Is identity theft stupid?
Is identity, like doing identity theft? Yeah, that's also stupid.
It is?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think people should be deported for stealing your identity?
Probably.
So, most of those things that you're saying now about ICE raiding those workplaces is cases of identity theft.
Most of the cases of ICE raids is because of identity theft?
Yep.
He's saying
Because
that the
they're
people
not
that are
allowed-
so-called here legally are just illegally using other people's identity
in order to
get
work
those jobs.
Exactly.
5 to 500 likes.
It's my impression that the kind of identity theft that you're talking about wouldn't be accounting for. I mean, the deportation numbers are pretty small under Trump right now, so maybe the majority of them are. But when we're talking about mass deportations, the kind that Homan's talking about and the kind that Donald Trump is talking about, he's not just talking about people coming after people who, engaged in identity theft. He's talking about anybody who's here illegally at all. And I heard, before I came up, you guys talking about asylum seekers. Those are not illegal immigrants, and you're in favor of getting rid of those kind of people too. So, I mean, that alone kind of
don't know what you're talking about.
Well, if you heard, let me elaborate again. If you heard what I said earlier, you can't falsely claim asylum just because you're fleeing financial hardship. Financial hardship is not a legal reason to seek asylum.
I kind of. I think what's you're able to seek asylum for is kind of up to the immigration judge, whether or not it's a clear case of...
No, seeking asylum legally, you have to be fleeing for your life from a tyrannical government.
That's not true.
Well, yeah, no, the circumstances that are required has to be some kind of persecution that is protected, or that is from one of the protected reasons. So persecution based on race, based on religion, and there's actually, like, within the documentations of the immigration laws for asylum seekers, the qualifying metrics are all there.
Yeah, sure, but it doesn't necessarily need to come down from a persecuting government. So, for instance, somebody could be given
that was
refugee
just
status.
one example.
Somebody could be given refugee status because of a hurricane, right?
No, yeah. To be clear, the law doesn't say that it has to be the government doing it. It's just any
I was just using
validatable form
one
of
example.
persecution.
Yeah.
Right, but what I'm saying is it doesn't necessarily need
Reynolds,
to be targeted by like a tyrannical government. It can also be from outside factors that are outside of direct persecution onto a person. Because, I mean, you can be given refugee status from a hurricane. That's not targeted at one person.
But asylum and refugee status are distinguished from each other. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, technically. But I have no reason to believe that that same asylum status wouldn't be granted, even if like refugee status wasn't technically granted. I have trouble believing that somebody's coming from a country that got ravaged by a hurricane that they wouldn't be able to seek asylum here.
Well, and I think that there is like a certain level of just discretion that has to be had. I mean, we have to understand that the resources of the U.S. are limited. I mean, we
Hmm.
definitely have more than other countries, but there are limitations to how many disasters we can support that are happening outside of our country. Do you think that we should be obligated to approve anybody who qualifies for refugee or asylum status, or do you think that it's within our jurisdiction to kind of cap it or limit the flow in to make sure that we're able to sustain the support that we're giving?
So it kind of depends on the circumstance. I think we should be letting in as many as possible. I know the one piece of legislation said like after we get to this
Holy
many encounters, we should be able to shut the border down until encounters fall. That bill was actually targeted by Donald Trump and ended in the
Okay,
I think in the House. But I would be
Mhm.
technically in favor of something like that just because it's a more practical solution. But I think the way that it's laid out in the
practical.
laws
Can I?
is I think the way that it's laid out in the laws where we let in refugees, we let in asylum seekers, we litigate their claims, we kick them out if they're fraudulent, and if we can deport them off to a third country where we can assure that their asylum or refugee claim will be heard, I think that's fine. But as we need to be giving these people safe places to seek refugee or to seek asylum, so they're not
All right,
persecuted
Let me
in their
rebuttal
country.
him. Let me rebuttal him, please, before I forget what I need to rebuttal him. It's a little asinine for you to say let's let in as many as possible, for the simple fact, and let me elaborate. Let me just give you a small example of the many millions of examples. One example here in New York City, where I live, Sanctuary City, for years, for as long as I can remember, like the lower income neighborhoods, like let's just say the projects or whatever, people from the projects, people from lower income neighborhoods, every year for as long as I can remember, they would get a free turkey on Thanksgiving. Do you know what's been happening for the last 4 years? For the last 4 years, the citizens and residents from these neighborhoods can no longer get the free turkeys. Why? Because when they go online, there's 1,000 illegal migrants or asylum seekers or whatever you want to call them online first, taking away these turkeys. And this is just one small example of the many resources they're taking away from citizens. So for you to sit there and say, let's let in as many as possible is completely asinine because you're showing that you don't give a rat's ass about the American citizens.
I mean, to that, I would say
Well,
our
Damien,
asylum processes have functioned about the same way since the 60s. So, I mean, if you're blaming this
let me
issue on the asylum and it didn't start in the 60s, it's
Really?
probably a different issue.
let
to
me
be
add something
clear,
to
like
that. Hold on.
I am in support of deportation. Like I hope that that has been made clear already. I come from a family of Venezuelan immigrants, right? There's a big distinction to be made by about being against immigration and being for a deportation. But what we have to recognize, Damien, even as somebody who I think mostly agrees with what you're saying, a part of the claim that we should let in as many as we can implies that the needs of our own citizens are sufficiently being met.
Hmm.
So any point where the needs of our own citizens are not sufficiently being met, and Ringold, I don't know if you would agree with this, but if we see a disparity in the government's care for their own citizens, is it right that we're taking on the burden of the citizens of other countries?
North Carolina
Uh,
and Tennessee, for example, last year
yeah, I don't. I
during
don't think
hurricane
we should be
season.
taking any dip in our citizens' well-being. I obviously don't think so. That's why, in the legislation, and why I brought up this caveat specifically, you can deport people as long as you can make sure that their asylum or refugee claim is being heard in that safe third country. I think that's fine.
I want to
Why
go
is
ahead
that
and say
on?
something really quick about that.
Spin Benz,
So,
wait up, wait up, wait up, y'all, wait up. This is his show, bro. Let Spin Benz go. He has something to
I
say.
just wanted to ask a question: why is that our problem if another country wants to do their job?
Well, I mean, there's two ways that you can come about that question. The legal answer to that is that we signed on to an international treaty saying that we would uphold refugee status. We haven't gotten out of that treaty. We also have U.S. code that enshrines asylum laws saying we can't deport you as long as you have a valid asylum claim for so and so reason. We have a whole process for this. To just walk back on this unilaterally without having any change to our laws would probably be fundamentally just against the American system. And then the second one is that if we have the ability, I think it's a good thing for people who are coming in from their ravaged country to be the land of the free, the land of opportunity. Allow these people to come in and seek a better life. That's kind of the whole point of why we have the big Statue of Liberty.
Disagree with that.
All right, I'm gonna go ahead and add something really quick. I've been trying to say something really. So back in 2022, I was working at a federal detention center under Biden, and the asylum cases that were coming in, they were not held in detention until their asylum case was done. They were given parole and given a court date and told, all right, we'll finish your asylum case, just get out of our detention center. But I still got some friends who live there or who still work there now, and they're saying, no, it's completely different. They do not leave the detention center until their asylum case is complete. And that was part of the huge influx of migrants going into these cities, was these migrants coming in who weren't even given before a judge yet. They were just given 14 days quarantine and sent on their way with the court date.
Yeah, I mean,
you agree with that?
I don't know if we should be punishing people for the
Do I
crime
need
of
to
seeking
introduce
asylum.
myself,
I feel like that's
or
probably
how
not
do I
good.
join in?
Yes, Diane, you would like to speak?
Yes, I would.
Okay.
Actually, I wanted to clarify a couple of points. First, asylum is distinctly different than refugee. Asylum requires that you are at 50% chance, at least 50% chance of being physically persecuted by the country that you are fleeing from. There is a difference in application as well. You are automatically pardoned when you apply for asylum. When you apply for asylum for entering without inspection. Entering without inspection is entering at a place other than the port of entry.
Mhm.
Everybody else has to apply for a waiver of inadmissibility. There's the welfare queen perspective is coming back out again, and it just makes me very it just makes me ill that we fall for it every time they throw it at us, because immigrants, but undocumented immigrants, and we have 11.2 million in the United States today, which includes DACA. It includes parolees. It includes all the people from all the different nations who have been receiving temporary protected status. It includes asylees, refugees, and individuals who have overstayed their visa. They are not entitled. A non-immigrant visa holder and people who are not documented are not entitled to any federal assistance, means tested federal assistance programs that includes housing, SNAP, welfare, etc. But the welfare queen stuff keeps coming up nonetheless, and I understand there's different programs in different states, such as in New York. But I want you to hear this. Out of the Medicare and Medicaid fraud panel, these people were pardoned by Mr. Trump. Philip Spermies, who had embezzled or somehow defrauded the government of
All right, this is a little too long. You kind of rambling right now.
1.3 billion. Judith Negrum, 205 million. Lawrence Melgren, 42 million. John Estes Davis, 4.6 million. And Lawrence Duran, 87 million. That's a lot of SNAP benefits right there. And I land my plane.
So help me understand, I guess, the application of that to the conversation. So I agree with you, for instance, that when we well, first, even that number that you gave of the 11 point odd million, that's quite frankly an educated but it's a guess. The
Correct.
one of the issues of being undocumented is that we don't know who you are.
Correct.
So it is an educated guess based on the flow of entry and things like that. We
Correct.
don't truly know. That's a part of why we have documents in the first place.
Right.
Second, even if somebody were to completely disregard the potential fraudulent use of welfare of any kind, I would say that just existing in this country gives you benefit that is paid for by the taxpayer by just the availability of the police force, of the fire department, of infrastructure and roads. There are plenty of benefits that you get literally just by standing on the street in America instead of standing on the street in Venezuela. That is still a limited resource that
So I
is
don't know about
being.
your state, but my
Mhm.
state, local law enforcement is paid through state taxes. And
Okay.
in my state, that is by excise taxes, it's sales taxes, it's property taxes. It is paid locally. These people
Does
are
your state
paid,
have a
and
state tax
we,
on
we,
income? Sorry.
we also, one of the two states that does have income tax. And yes, they are required to pay that through I-10 or whatever manner.
Well,
Most
I-10s
people,
are only if they
mo-
own their own business, though, right?
right. Well, no, actually, several years ago, the IRS made it available to undocumented people to make sure that they paid taxes on their income. So,
They
like,
do have
even
an ITIN number. Yep.
right,
Right. So
and so
ITIN
It's
is
it's been
and
like
technically
that
for
forever
those
and
here
who.
in New York City.
that has been used as a, a potential that we might offer amnesty somewhere in the future, and that documents their work history.
I had a very quick note and just a quick question since you mentioned that keyword, Diane, amnesty. For all of those here who are in support of the deportation of, you know, undocumented or illegal people, first off, I want to start off by saying that I acknowledge and I agree that for all legal intents and purposes, if you enter illegally, you broke the law, right? That should be, I know that it's sufficient for you to be returned. That's just how it works. But let's just say Antonio mentioned also that we don't know who these people are, they're not vetted, and surely some of them do commit crimes, but let's just say if we had the opportunity, or if we had the opportunity where we were able to vet them, right? We knew who they were, they had no sort of criminal background aside from entering illegally, yes, I know that, but they had no other sort of violent criminal background. If we were able to see that they did have stable jobs, they did contribute to the economy, would you guys then support some sort of amnesty while they're currently here? Would you? Is that something that you guys would get behind?
Okay.
I think
So
that that's. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I have a different perspective. I think amnesty,
But
politically,
before we
it,
give a different perspective, I think we should let these people answer that question because I think that's a very,
Yeah.
very good question.
okay, I don't know. I thought it was addressed to me, so
I
Well, it
it
was to
was addressed
anyone.
towards the
Yeah.
pro deportation people, I believe.
okay.
I'm sorry. This is the best live I've been in. No yelling, no screaming, no talking over anybody.
Crazy, huh?
Right?
To keep it peaceful.
But
Let
so
everybody else.
sorry,
I
host. You
mean,
sound a little bit muffled there. I didn't see you talking. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was saying if you guys want to answer his question, yell at. Okay.
yeah, I can answer it if you want. See, the
Okay.
problem with that is, yes, even whatever they're here to want to work or whatever. But again, as I mentioned earlier, you know, they're whether you want to hear it or not, they're taking source resources from American citizens just with their presence alone. Like
It's
we
not true.
barely have the yes, I'm in New York City, a sanctuary city. I see it every day. We barely have the resources for our own people, and to allow millions and millions of people who want to be here for amnesty or whatever, it's not fair to our own citizens because they're here taking jobs away from American citizens. Do you know that it took me over a year for the first time in my in my adult life to find a job in these last 2 years? I finally got a job, but the first time in my life I was out of work for over a year. It's no coincidence. It's because every job I went to, there was 1,000 illegal migrants applying for the job. So
I,
they're
I
taking away
Are
resources
you
from American
speaking of
citizens.
I
Canadians?
think one of the problems that we're running into is that the Republicans, and I'm not trying to lump you guys in, but Republicans have been very, very successful in scapegoating a lot of problems to immigrants. Like
I agree
if
with
you
that.
can't find a job, then it must be the immigrant's fault. If you
Yeah.
can't get your government guaranteed turkey, it must be the government, or it must be the immigrant's fault. If I can't
Again,
get my application
I'm
accepted for
not
this apartment, it must be the
reiterating what
immigrant's
I
fault.
heard. I'm telling you from experience.
So,
So
Well,
you're
Damien,
just
but you're
Damien.
debunking
not.
your
So
But you're
claim
To be
right
not
very
though.
there.
fair,
You're
to
not
be
though. You're
very
saying
fair,
you're
Damien.
saying that you didn't get this job because thousands
I
of
have a
immigrants were.
bachelor's degree.
I
The
understand
first time
that.
in my life I wasn't able to get a
Are
job
you telling
in
me that?
over a
But
year.
but are you telling me that 11,000 illegal immigrants with bachelor's degrees were clogging up the application for that job, or do you
And
think that was
it's
just like an overstimulated market?
No, I think the companies rather pay less money. So of course they're gonna
But
hire
but
an illegal
Damien,
migrant.
again,
if it's a
Damien.
position that requires a bachelor's degree, why would illegal immigrants be
No,
applying to that?
I never said I. Holy cow! I have a bachelor's degree, but because I haven't been able to get a job in my field for over a year, I have driving and stuff like that. Which, by the way, I didn't know, but truck driving actually pays a hell of a lot of money, more than
It does pay a
actually
lot of
when I
money.
was a Actually, when I was a professional accountant, I was making half of what I'm making now. So I'm actually happy I'm
I,
driving a
I
truck now
did
because
want
I'm making
Damien,
a
Damien,
shitload of money right
I
now.
did want to
Damien.
quick.
Listen, as somebody who is pro deportation, I'm gonna let you know, as somebody on your side, anytime that a claim is made that immigrants caused this, there has to be some kind of proof. Because,
Mhm.
like, I'm an employer. I have 7 restaurants across Houston, Texas. Like, I see also very much firsthand. There's a high population of undocumented immigrants here. I work in the hospitality industry, which is one of the highest density industries for undocumented migrants. But even still, like, unless you have a way to prove that the job search was because of migrants, we can't necessarily attribute it to it. You might be able to theorize, but we just don't know for certain. And so if you're going to try to convince anybody on the other side that there's an issue here, we have to go based off of that which is provable. And in a debate format, telling your own story and providing it as proof is called um,
An anecdote. Yeah.
Yeah,
anecdote,
anecdotal evidence.
anecdotal
Yeah.
evidence, which we're just all random strangers on the internet. I don't know who you
I
are. You could
kind
be faking. You could be faking the New Jersey accent. I mean, the New York
I,
accent. I don't
I
know.
wanted to circle back to the main question as well. I can let Damien respond to
Yeah.
it if he wants to, but I just wanted to say to the anyone regarding the who may support some sort of amnesty or program. I also think that maybe Damien focused a little bit more on them taking, and not also on which I'm not saying that some of them, if they were gained citizenship, they wouldn't also use the resources that comes with that, right? They probably would. Many of them would, but they would also have the opportunity to pay more to taxes, which is something that a lot of the right has complained about. They would also contribute into the system, so I don't think it's just necessarily being like, oh, but they would take. I think that if they were granted that status, um, they would also contribute a lot, and also I wouldn't be opposed to them maybe having to pay some sort of fine, right, or something to
Mhm.
also be able to
They
earn
do.
that. So I was just curious if someone here is there anyone who actually may be open to that or in support of. Not I'm not saying that you're a
So
champion behind it,
yeah,
but that you're open
and I
to it.
think so. The thing is, I think that not only would I be open to it, I think that even Trump has mentioned in a few different iterations that for certain industries and for certain people that qualify, he would work towards that end. Like I know that he mentioned in his congressional address for the agricultural workers working with the employers to backlog and get them working visas at least so that they can continue to work in other things like that. Now, I do think that we should be careful and wise in how we go about it, and I don't think that full amnesty would be the correct answer, where they don't have to pay back any taxes that we can prove that they should have, or things like that. But I think that they should have to pay back taxes if there are any. And yeah, I think that there should also be an additional fine. But if the goal that you're seeking out of the amnesty is just to avoid deportation, I think that certain cases could absolutely be made for that. I think that a big part of the problem, though, is that those instances are going to be so watered down, the ones that wouldn't qualify, that I don't know if it would be reasonable to try and go through the extra effort to find those cases. If
What do
those
you
cases were
mean
May I make a
by
Listen,
suggestion?
watered down,
I don't
Antonio?
care how much
Sure.
taxes they pay. Let me give you another example of how their presence is annoying. All right, my car insurance.
Come
Hold
Wait,
on.
on.
I don't care about if their presence is annoying. I want to know if it's
That's
No, no. Let
beneficial.
me
yeah,
explain.
Damien.
Let me explain.
That's a
I
much
My
didn't
wife
You
is
know,
gonna
interrupt
that
deport. My wife
anybody.
is
really
gonna
is
deport me
very
I
if I
didn't
watch it.
frustrating.
interrupt. Let me talk. I didn't interrupt anybody. Holy cow.
I just wanted to
All
say you're
right.
pretty
My
annoying, Damien.
car insurance tripled in the last 2 years. It went from 287 to now 637. And do you know why? As to why?
The
The
immigrants.
Prove
insurance
your
lady
answer. Whatever you say next.
specifically, the
Uh-huh.
insurance representative specifically stated that they've seen a large amount of accidents by, fake car insurance, people driving without car insurance and everything. I can show you a picture right now. Some asshole Venezuelan dude. He parks his car every day around my corner with registration stickers that expired in 2022. Still driving
Okay,
around.
so how do you know his
Obviously, he doesn't
status?
have
How
car
do you know his
insurance.
status? How
You
do you know his
cannot get
status?
car registered if you don't have insurance.
How do you
That's
know
number
his
one.
status though?
Holy shit, bro. I lived in New York all my life. I
So
think I know my
I lived
you
in New
neighborhood
can't
York. That's
pretty
Damien,
why I
damn
know
Damien,
this
well.
you
guy's
I
got
can't
know
illegal
Damien,
immigrants.
everybody in my neighborhood. The,
Damien.
the
Damien,
matter of
he's
the
asking
hold
you.
on, I don't
Damien,
give a
no,
shit
no,
about
no,
you think it's anecdotal. You want to
no.
sit there and
Damien,
pretend
It
Get the
Damien,
like
is.
fuck out
no,
of
Damien,
no,
here.
no, no,
Damien,
no.
You
Hold
want to
on.
tell people to shut up?
Let me
Fuck
land
out
my
of here, you bitch. What the hell?
my
Damien.
plane, you
We're
fucking
trying to.
libtard.
Damien,
Damien, we're not
I'm
gonna.
on your side here, but I'm trying to make sure. Again, Damien, if your goal here is to convince people,
It's not.
you have to do it in a certain way. But it sounds like your goal is really just to
All right,
complain.
let's pretend like they're 11 million illegals didn't come here, and all of this is just a coincidence at the
Wait,
same
Nobody's
time of their
saying that
Damien.
arrival.
either, Damien.
All of
Damien,
this
again,
started
I'm
happening
literally trying
upon
to
There's
their
help you.
arrival.
I
Damien, no,
clarified.
it
There's a
didn't. It
difference
started in the
between
60s.
illegal and
Holy, and that's
undocumented.
why you guys lost, because you want to
Damien, you sound
pretend
like a
like their
clown.
Wow.
presence.
I'll
You
pull
want to
out my bingo
pretend.
sheet.
Damien! Jeez, he said that an insurance
Okay.
company raises premium because some random Venezuelan has expired
Expired
tags.
plates.
He
That
sounds
was
like
too
a
big of a
freaking
leap.
idiot.
Yeah, that was
And I
too big
wasn't
of a
even
leap.
going to go off on him until
I
he
think the
started
host
telling
is
people
trying.
to
I
shut
think
up.
the host is
I
trying to
can't hear
talk,
the
but
host.
host
I
again,
cannot
your
hear the
mic is
host.
so quiet, bud.
Sorry about that. I enjoyed Damien's time and up until the last part. I don't want to keep this yelling going back and forth. I'll want to keep it as professional as possible, even though it is a TikTok live. So
I
just
appreciate you,
given
host.
the being called.
I don't know if y'all use the
I think
hands up in
Diane
the
had
chat
something
or
she
not.
wanted to add.
I
I
did
see the
see
hands.
Diane.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like I was
I
like,
see your hand.
yes,
Sorry,
please.
Diane.
I want to tell you. Okay, so I worked as a volunteer during IRCA 1986. That was the Simpson-Rodino Act that allowed for amnesty. And that was actually, it was a bipartisan bill. It was signed in by Reagan, like a conservative president. He truly was conservative. He was pro-industry, thinking that this would provide the labor for that group. But as soon as people got their papers, they decided they had rights and they weren't going to work 18-hour days and they weren't going to work in unfavorable conditions. So amnesty didn't work and it will never happen again. The reason being is immigrants right now, they actually, undocumented immigrants who work, actually bolster our Social Security to where it is solvent for an additional 2 years. They can never, until they get lawful permanent residence, and it is very difficult to get lawful permanent residence, they cannot ever benefit from any Social Security program, whether SSDI or Social Security. And once they have become legal residents for 5 years, then that's when they can start getting assistance, like through the federal programs. But they have to be legal permanent residence before they can do that. Just getting amnesty, just getting asylum, just getting a visa does not do that. You have to live and maintain residence for 5 years.
Mhm.
The Republicans did not like it because then they had to get a new crop of undocumented workers to come work in the farms, to work in those low wage jobs. And they still do it to this day. When even when immigrants try to unionize, they will clean out a whole factory. They will call ICE on themselves so that they get their factory cleaned out so they can continue working people the way they like to work people. So what I would suggest is, rather than an amnesty, is to provide it to where, and this was something that was in IRCA 1986 as well, you had to have an I-9 in order to be employed. That's $10,000 if you employed somebody who was not authorized to work. And it also provided the same penalty for unions that had people in their union that were undocumented, which is antithetical. Like, if we want our wages to be competitive, why don't we allow immigrants to be in the union?
Because if you allow mass migrants to come and they all are willing to take cheaper minimum wages.
Okay, first off, you are going with this mass migrants, but asylees.
Why is it that you get to immediately talk when you ask a question?
Well, I really always done, but okay,
Bro,
whatever you say.
Chill.
Mass migrant. You're talking about mass deportation. We're including DACA recipients.
I'm talking about migrants.
Okay, so if you are talking about farm workers, there's many farm workers that get the B2 visa. They get those visas, come up here and pick, and then they leave. They actually have a place to stay. They can get those visas. They're sponsored and they're supported, but they're also
a lot of people
abused.
get H2As that shouldn't be coming here.
Okay, Pat, you just got in here. I just want to hear, what is your take on deportation?
My name is Pat Buchanan. I'm 21 years old, from Texas. I did not vote for Donald Trump because I don't believe he is a good president, and the lackluster numbers of deportations proves that.
Okay, so you do not agree with mass deportation?
Oh,
No,
no, he's
absolutely.
actually saying the opposite. He
agree?
thinks Trump isn't doing it hard enough.
He's not doing enough.
Pat, do you agree
Yeah.
with immigration generally? Like, do you agree with U.S. policy on immigration generally?
No.
Do you believe in like any immigration, or do you think we should just shut off immigration?
There's been immigration benefits, historically speaking, but today there's not a single net positive to immigration. And I don't want to hear,
Okay, so
they
no immigration at all, right?
Right now, I don't believe there's any benefits in immigration. No, that doesn't.
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure we were all
since
on
we're
the
setting,
even playing field.
Yes,
We're not talking
and
about illegal
okay.
immigration. We're talking about all immigration.
All immigration.
now to continue in the spirit of clarity, for any of those who would, I guess, be against the general concept of deportation, just to say against, I obviously think that everybody agrees that there are certain people that qualify. Just like, I guess, a simple thread, would you say anybody who did not register their asylee status in the timeline that the Texas immigration law gives, do you think that they should be deported?
Okay, so that was. Are
probably.
you just asking if people who are?
It's not a Texas law.
Are you talking about
No, not
United
Texas.
States? Are you talking about United States Code 8-1325?
No, I think it's actually 1225, but yeah,
For sure, whatever. I may have gotten the numbers wrong, but it allows for a year of the person to enter the United States and a year to declare asylum. I don't believe we should be allowing political asylum.
Why?
Right, Pat, you don't want any people coming in, so this was to the other people, I guess.
Why should we shut off immigration? Okay, so, I just want to. I would like to know.
The reason why we have asylum, and
I know why we have asylum. I don't agree with it.
Well, we go down and we disrupt their governments down in the Northern Triangle, and we actually train many people in the School of the Americas of how to do what they do to their peasant people, and then they're knocking.
I'm very familiar with this
because we trained Noriega. We trained these generals.
Diane, similar to Damien, though. I mean, again, to say that is why we have an asylee process, I don't know if that's a claim that would be able to
Diane,
be
I don't really think you
substantiated.
can attribute like the
It goes back
CIA
to the
training
Nuremberg
details.
trials. It goes back to the
Diane.
Nuremberg trials. We denied 1/3 of all German Jews admittance. We went back.
Diane, I
But
don't
did,
really
if
know
we
if you
had,
can.
We signed into international law that we
Just
will
love
hear
talking.
asylum cases. And currently, Amnesty International is citing us as being inhumane in how we are handling the asylums.
okay, so Diane, let's just, let me re-ask the question again, because maybe I missed your answer to it. In our asylee program, it was a year, and I think Trump actually boosted it to 3 years time, where after claiming asylum, you have a year to 3 years, whichever it is now, to actually report that you are in the country. Otherwise, you are no longer qualified for that status. Do you agree with that law and that it should be enforced through deportation?
Furthermore, because of that law, there are 2 other laws. And if you look at Abrego Garcia's case, he was beyond that 365 days, but he was allowed withholding of deportation because of a second law. And he could also have qualified under international T laws as well.
Okay, so I'm asking in the case that they don't
Yeah,
qualify
notice
for
how she
any
just
other
didn't answer
laws.
the question.
What I'm saying is that in the law, it says that you can apply proactively and you can apply defensively.
The question
Both
is
are
if
allowed,
somebody
and
doesn't
even
go
beyond
through.
the 365 days,
Clearly,
you
her
can
answer is
still
no. She thinks they should
apply.
stay here.
You
They
can
shouldn't be
still
deported.
apply, even though denied. There are 2 other international laws that will qualify you for a visa in the United States.
The question,
Right, so
the
Diane,
question
my,
is if this migrant doesn't apply for any of that, should we get rid of them?
They can apply when they are detained.
If they don't, should they be gotten rid
well,
of?
even if
That's
they
the
do and they
question.
just don't qualify, like I'm not questioning whether or not there are other contingency plans that can be executed by the individual. My question is quite simply, if somebody only qualifies for the asylee program due to the
Only.
persecution described within it and fail to do so within the time frame of the law, do you think that they should be deported?
Clearly, she doesn't think they do.
I
She
am
just
saying
would.
they are allowed due process under
Yes,
the
she
Fourth Amendment.
clearly no. She thinks that there should be second
Diane,
circumstances that prevent.
There are international laws that then
Diane,
apply.
can I ask you a question?
Wait, so Diane, the convention that you're citing, I think it's TikTok TOS, so I won't say the full name, but the convention and withholdings of removal, those only apply to specific countries, right? So let's say that this asylee may apply for asylum, but doesn't apply within a year. They get withholding from their home country, and then they get deported to a third country. Do you think that's fine? Do you think that's a good thing for the government to do? That's the question that we're trying to get at the heart of.
It is within the law for a person to be deported to a third country. As the law is written, I would support it as long as it's carried out to the letter of the law.
Okay, so anybody who overstays past the point where they are supposed to apply for asylee, if they don't qualify for these other things, you would agree that the due process, because again, due process
If they do not qualify for the other things, they've had their due process, they are deportable.
Let them finish the question.
So I hope that we all recognize that the term due process typically gets conflated to mean only one form of the process. But if you go throughout the immigration laws, specifically for deportation, there are multiple processes that are there. There are some that qualify for what the law calls expedited removal, meaning there is no court hearing, there is nothing other than get them out. And there are others that would qualify for a much lengthier process. People throw out that term due process, defaulting its meaning to say that they get a court hearing, they get a caseworker, they get all these things. There are going to be some whose due process is just removal. Do we all acknowledge that?
Sure, but I mean, there's even going to be some due process that those people may be like applicable to. So for example, what Diane brought up, like you can seek like withholding of removal from certain countries. You can seek the convention against that T word that we probably shouldn't say. those are things that are afforded to even illegal immigrants. I don't know if they're afforded to immigrants who are subject to expedited removal, but I assume they are. So I mean, like, if they're not given an opportunity to seek those kind of remedies, then that would also be a violation of their due process rights.
Right, but anybody who can be found to find association with a T group, the only due process is expedited removal,
It
regardless of
depends.
if they're.
Oh, if wait. Like I gotta clarify this
Mhm.
because Abrego was accused, but he did not have a trial or hearing, was not convicted.
You're picking
Wait,
apart a frog
wait.
whenever we're just talking about the study. Like we're not talking about his case specifically.
Well, right, but there were 75% of the people that went on those planes to a extra high security prison who did not have any criminal charges pending or
Hmm.
ever levied against them either here or in another country.
Well, and even if you're talking about like the alien enemies, for example, the ones that we signed the Alien Enemies Act for, like for this particular gang, um, you know, even in that case, the Supreme Court ruled that these people have the right to file a habeas petition to contest their detention by the federal government. So even in that case, there are some levels of due process that these people have, which was decided by the Supreme Court. It's not just as simple as
Sure,
we detain you and then we get you out of here because we think you might possibly be associated with somebody. That's not really. They have the right to challenge that detention as well.
sure.
It's just in a very limited, specific venue.
Sure, and like I said, this my point wasn't to say that every single instance of the process's execution has been being done flawless, but I think it's always important for us to settle on what should be done because we don't want to throw out the baby with the bathwater. We all agree that there are people that should be deported, just point blank, period.
Hmm.
And so the first question is just who,
Now,
because once
if I can flip that kind of question on you as well, like, do you think it's appropriate that we've had multiple lawsuits against the Trump administration from immigrants who are saying, yeah, they're trying to put me on a plane as fast as they can before I have the opportunity to talk to a lawyer to challenge my detention? Do you think that that's also probably a cause for concern when it comes to these kind of deportations?
So are you asking me if I should be concerned because there's a lawsuit filed?
Well, I
I mean,
mean,
anybody
in
can
the case
file a
of
lawsuit.
in the case of
I think that a lawsuit
JGG,
being filed is a good thing.
in the case
Like
of
that means that they're doing something.
well, in the case of JGG, I mean, like, that was settled in well, technically in favor of the government, but on the grounds that it had to be brought through a specific claim or like a specific venue. But like, it was confirmed and was not contested by the government that they detained these people in a day. And then the next day they were on a plane getting ready to be shipped off to El Salvador before Donald Trump's proclamation of the Alien Enemies Act had even become public. It became public after one of the planes had already took off for El Salvador. Like, that's not a meaningful adherence to due process rights, right?
I would have to look more into it, but if the timeline is that of what you say, and if there are people that did not qualify even before the Aliens Enemy Act for expedited removal that would have qualified them for this process, like I would have to see like all the T's crossed and I's dotted.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I mean, if there's somebody who before the proclamation would have qualified for a due process other than what they were given, then I'm always going to default to the law. They deserve what the law says they can have, and they don't necessarily deserve anything more than that.
Yeah, so just so we're clear, so I can like touch up some of the details. The case is called JGG
Hmm.
versus Trump, and then it got kicked back down, and then now I think it's WMM versus Trump,
Okay.
because it had to be brought in through the jurisdiction of a different type of filing, whatever. Basically,
Okay.
what had happened is the Trump administration, ICE, Homeland Security, whoever was rounding up these immigrants, had them in an airport in Texas, on the grounds that they were alien enemies because they were Venezuelans, a part of a, a T group. But these immigrants who were detained on that One, they were detained before the Alien Enemies Act proclamation had been public, and two, they were already on the plane before any of them had any idea what was going on, before they could reach out to a lawyer. And the only reason that the lawsuit ended up getting filed was because one of the planes had broken down, and one of the immigrants had gotten word that that's why they were being deported, and they were able to file that lawsuit. But it was only because one of the planes broke down that they had the time to do that. So like we could agree that that kind of deportation isn't in compliance with what we understand to be like people's rights, and or even legally, aside from legally, like morally, that's not right as well, right? Like
That's right.
Well, no,
That's right.
morally is just subjective. So, but what are you
well,
going
like,
to do about it? Are you going to
well,
go protest about it?
here's the question. I mean, like, I don't know if we should say that this is just subjective. Like, I would hope that we
Morality
agree.
is subjective.
Well, I would
So-
hope that we agree that if the government detains somebody
Hope
and
all
then
you want.
okay, I would really love to get this question up without being interrupted, please. I really hope that we could agree that if the government detains this person and then tries to get you out of the country as quick as possible because you're associated with a T group, that the person trying to be removed from the country should get the ability to challenge that, right? They shouldn't just go with the government's word.
I mean, I really don't care what you're saying. So
Because you're not listening. Okay, cool.
no, I'm listening. What I'm asking is, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to go protest? Are you going to do something? Or are you just going to talk about it?
Do you think that's appropriate? Do you think it's appropriate to treat people like that?
Because if you don't take any action, it's meaningless.
Okay,
Well,
so you think
Thomas,
it's
the whole
appropriate
point
for the
of coming
government to
on this
round?
channel-
You think it's appropriate for the government to round people up and not give them the ability to challenge the accusation?
It's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, what are you?
That's exactly what you
personally
just
going to
said,
do about
by
it?
the way.
You
You just
just
said it
you
was
have a
appropriate.
problem with something. I'm saying, what actions are you going to take to change it? What are you personally doing to go and try to change that?
Well, Thomas,
What can a voter
Tom,
do
one
other than
second,
vote
Rand,
protest?
one second, Rand. So Thomas,
Well,
listen.
that's what I asked. Are you
Me
going to
and
protest? Or are you going to?
Yeah.
Thomas,
You're gonna call-
me and Ren are on opposite sides of this conversation, right? But the truth of the matter is, the beauty of being in America and being American is that the whole point is we the people. So even just having a conversation with people who disagree with you, that enough is utilizing our rights as Americans to be able to express ourselves. Like, if you want to be pro-America, be pro-First Amendment, and understand that he doesn't have to do anything other than express his opinion.
So I can.
Can I
so just so
respond,
that,
host, to this
yeah,
Thomas?
so that I'm clear. Like, you have a conversation with each other. You disagree. You have open dialogue. I'm gonna say, okay, freedom of speech, woohoo. I'm gonna go and paint a picture about it because it makes me feel good, and then I go to bed at night, and then no action is taken, and the result is the same the following day, and I'm supposed to feel good about
Thomas, we live in a we live in a republic. We vote in representatives to make our voices heard. We
that.
vote in a
Are
different
you gonna
president.
go run and change the laws?
I don't
Well,
have
Thomas,
to run for
again,
office in
all
order
he
to
has
vote
to-
for people to change the laws.
Disregarding
Thomas,
the point
So
of
are
the
you gonna run?
Yeah.
Thomas, this is a
Thomas,
republic. You
what-
vote for your representatives. I can go out and vote, and that's how I can make my voice heard on a national
Yeah,
scale. That's the whole
like
point of
that.
this country.
That was stupid. I'm sorry. That was just
It
stupid.
was. I'm sorry about that. I didn't know he was going to get in there and just.
Yeah, I mean, look, in my mind, all you have to do is make an effort to change one person's opinion, and you're helping your cause, even if you're unsuccessful. I mean, that was
I
stupid.
100% agree with you.
Yeah,
Came in
I
here
just
with no purpose.
Well, also, it
Yeah,
was
I
like
wanted to
it was
share- oh,
voting.
go ahead.
It was voting and talking that got the person elected. So I mean, like the idea that voting and talking can't get this guy out of office is whatever. Yeah, go ahead.
So I'm
Okay,
looking into the. Oh, sorry.
yeah.
I
Let
wanted
me.
to get Revolution was trying to say something.
Yeah, so I think it is very important to push back against ideas that we disagree with.
Mhm.
This idea that you should just stay silent and do nothing, especially when you have a president who is violating the Constitution, in my opinion, obviously, and that's debatable. We need to have more voices that oppose Trump because, in my opinion, it's like a cult, and these discussions, I think, are of the utmost importance. And I want to say shout out to Rinyald for doing the research and speaking facts. And
I
thank you
appreciate it.
guys for having the discussion. All right, I'm out, but y'all keep on rocking.
I try my
Yeah,
hardest
I
to
mean,
love you, Revolution.
You guys might not love the guy, but one of the things that he said that always, rings true in my ear whenever I come to these kind of conversations from, a second, I'm going to sneeze. Oh, excuse me.
Bless you.
That was a less than pleasant experience. Thank you guys. But
Anthony and
yeah,
Renaud, I would like to bring for you, just something up for you to look at
Mhm.
to understand the Fourth Amendment rights, the Fifth Amendment rights, the Eighth Amendment rights that are involved in immigration. And it sort of pertains to the jurisdiction of ICE,
Mhm.
even and it was pre expedited removal. It's Almeida Sanchez versus the United States, and it's spelled ALMIEDA Sanchez,
Wait, hold
hyphenated
on.
Sanchez.
ALM. I'm sorry, I'm a slow typer. ALM
I
what?
believe it's AIDA Almeida.
Wait.
yes,
Okay,
A
now
L
Sanchez.
M A L M
ALMID
E I no EIDA. I've already got it pulled up.
EIDA Sanchez
Yeah. Sanchez
Almeida
versus U.S.
Sanchez. It's a hyphenated last name.
Yeah, it's from 1973. I've got
versus
it pulled
Yes.
who?
up.
U.S.
U.S.
Versus the United States.
On the UK lights, please. We're halfway
And
there.
and the guy was bad. He was in the wrong. He was in the wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But
Okay.
he won the case. They threw out the evidence against him. He was an immigrant. He was within 50 miles of the border, but they overstepped their jurisdiction. And he basically got the OJ release.
Gotcha.
So immigration is held to a standard as well, even though
Uh-huh.
it is a administrative agency. It's not a law enforcement agency. That's why they have to have troopers or police or sheriffs go in and stop people so that they can go in and find them.
Mm-hmm.
So like, unless they have a what is called an administrative warrant, they can execute an administrative warrant, but they do not have bench warrants. They are not like police officers. They do
Mm-hmm.
not have a judicial warrant to stop people, like, just because they think that they might be suspicious.
Yeah.
This outlines it very clearly as to why they cannot just stop somebody because they're brown and they speak Spanish.
All right.
That
Yeah.
is not
Perfect.
what is that is not what is happening today.
I'll read up about the case. I've got to read Citizens United first, but I'll it's on the look into list.
Solid point. Solid point.
All right, well, folks, I made it home, and I've been sitting in my driveway long enough where my wife is like checking our driveway camera, asking if I'm okay. Uh, I mean, she knows that I get into these, debates a lot.
Mhm.
So I just told her, I'm like, no, it's just a good discussion for once. And she's like, okay, take your time. Love my wife. But what I will say is this, and I'm gonna lead with saying this is just gonna be purely anecdotal. This is not being presented as evidence to my case, but
Mhm.
just as a motivation to why I care. So kind of like I mentioned before, my family is Venezuelan immigrants. My dad came to the U.S. when he was 13. I was born here, so I'm first generation. We fought for about 5 years through the various process to get my grandmother to be able to come from Venezuela to the U.S. Through the legal means. We actually celebrated the 5 year anniversary of her citizenship about a month ago. Whenever
Okay.
I ask her, like, hey, like, just give me your opinion on this. Obviously, it's like, it's a topic we talk about all the time. She told me that she went through that process for two reasons. She said, one, she cared enough about her family to never want the fear of deportation to exist within it. She said that she wanted to make sure that that was just never something on our mind. And two, she said, even if she had no family here, she said America was so much better than where she's coming from that it was worth going through the grueling process to be here. And so for me, what that turns into is anyone who doesn't, and again, what I'm saying to be very clear is anyone who does not follow the process,
Mhm.
whether it's the process of seeking asylum, the process of seeking refugee status, whatever process that they are seeking, if they disregard that process, that tells me the inverse of those two concepts, that they are accepting the fear and risk of deportation, and that America is not worth enough to bear the burden of the process to be here legally.
Well, I mean, so I would say two things to that. The first of which is that I'm sympathetic to people who go through the process, because that, you know, I'm a law and order kind of guy. I love the process. I love process in general, but the problem is that the process of immigrating into the country is just really, 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 really bad right now. And Donald Trump is also making it particularly really bad, because I'm pretty sure physical access through the southern border is completely barred right now. So like I am sympathetic to the idea of like, well, you know, you should just go through the process legally, because if you go through it illegally, you're kind of cutting in line of all of the people who have these exorbitant wait times. But I would also say that it's really easy to just say that and then move on from the issue, instead of actually fighting for border reform in order to actually reduce these wait times, in order to encourage people to actually take the legal route that doesn't take 12 to 20 years, instead of just coming here illegally. I
actually have some numbers on that.
I'd be very, well, just to put a cap on that, I would be very sympathetic to that argument if the wait times weren't so insane, and if nobody was willing to do anything about it.
Yeah, to be clear, I wasn't bringing that up as a point. That was my farewell, and so I don't want to get caught up in another dialogue, because I promise I will stay here until 1 a.m. and my wife will just be without a husband.
I just want to say there's
but tomorrow's
3.7 million people that they know their exact whereabouts, and they are on the waiting list for their first hearing. 3.7 million. And even if they did an appointment every hour of their day, if they work 8 hours a day, just meeting this, they will not be done until 2030.
Yeah.
They have to add more agents and more judges.
Yeah, and I think that, I mean, again, and I'm not going to go as far as maybe Damien does whenever making an assumption here. So forgive me if this is purely speculatory. But I feel that the process would be a lot easier if the judges and folks only had to focus on the flow of people going through the process rather than this backlog. There is a certain degree where, by excusing people who tell the process, because the process is difficult, makes the process more difficult, therefore excusing even more. And it just feels like it would be an endless regress where we say, well, it's hard, so of course they're skipping it, but by them skipping it, it just makes it harder.
I mean, yeah, sure, but you could say the same thing about, like,
you
could probably say the same thing about criminal prosecutions too. Like, it'd be very easy if all of our justice system was just like litigating civil disputes. Like, that would be a lot easier. But unfortunately, there are a lot of people, regardless, that you're just going to need to hear. That's a necessary part of this system, is you're going to need to hear fraudulent claims and dismiss them. There's no system where it's going to get rid of that. That looks even remotely similar to the system that we have now. So I think that the better answer would probably just to be expand the resources that these people have, expand the amount of judges so they can process these claims quicker, instead of like trying to strive towards this idea of like not hearing fraudulent claims.
Yeah. To be clear, what I'm not saying is that we will ever get to an ideal where there is no fraudulent claims. What I am saying is that we just have to be really careful about saying that because of the difficulty of the process, that excuses curtailing the process entirely. We have to acknowledge that those.
But I don't think they're skirting it. I think the 3.7 is the people that are applying. The 3.7 million, because it's 11.2 undocumented. That includes over 500,000 who are DACAs. It includes all the TPS from all the different countries. It includes people who have overstayed their visas. Those are the ones that you need to look out for. But
well, even to that point, like,
all right, I'm leaving now. Goodbye. Love and peace,
I appreciate
everybody.
talking to you, Antonio. It's been good talking.
You guys.
Great talking.
But yeah, I mean, I would say in addition, oh wait, did I lose my train of thought? Oh yeah, I agree to a certain extent that oh my god, the vibrating in my ears. I agree to a certain extent that the process being bad doesn't mean that you can completely skirt the process. I agree, but the problem is that we see a lot of complaining about people ignoring the process without any effort to fix the process. It's very. I would be much more sympathetic to people saying, we need to be really hard on illegal immigration while we try and fix our immigration process to see what's going on. That I'd be much more
Secretary
sympathetic to
Rubio
that.
was the co-sponsor of the Gang of Eight immigration bill back during the Obama administration that did not pass.
Okay.
So
Okay,
who exactly is not participating in reforming the process if the Secretary of State actually dedicated a substantial portion of his
Has
political
Donald
career
has
to doing
has
so?
Donald Trump came out in favor of any border reform bill? Reform bill?
So we only care about immigration reform
The
when
answer
Donald
is
Trump's in
no.
office,
The
not
answer is
when
no.
Biden or
Yeah,
Obama
we're
are.
we're talking. Well,
Well,
Biden had a bill. First of all, second of all,
What was the name of the
well,
bill?
it wasn't Biden's bill actually. It was James Langsford's bill,
yeah, the
and he's
Langford
a
bill.
Republican. He's a Republican from Oklahoma, the reddest state in the nation.
But
And
Biden committed
it
to signing
actually
that bill, though. That's the point I was making. Is that Biden committed? I think the day after it was proposed that if it passes through Congress, he would sign that bill. Has Donald Trump committed to
correct.
signing a bill on the border? Has there even been a bill for the border proposed?
I think he's worried about closing it. I think that's probably his main goal right now.
I agree, but to say
Me too.
that Rubio co-signed a bill in
There's
the
a big
Obama
difference
years, that's
between a
irrelevant.
border bill and comprehensive immigration reform. Like Trump has signed into law multiple border bills. One could argue that the one big beautiful bill is a border bill. There's a lot of border stuff in there. If you're looking for comprehensive immigration reform, that tends not to be done in omnibus policymaking.
Ian, I do want to get your take on is deportation good or bad, and mass deportation because you just got in here.
Uh, I think like with most things, it's a matter of priorities. I know that there have been lists in this country of folks who are supposed to be deported who have then stayed over for years and multiple arrests thereafter. I think that we used to have a pretty broad political consensus in this country that major crimes, especially things like felonies, that people who had engaged in criminal acts who had no legal status here should be deported, and I still think that doing so is reasonable. That doesn't mean that every deportation ever conducted is the correct decision because this is a judicial process.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that if somebody commits a felony or commits a violent act that they should be deported. I agree with that. But the problem is that Donald Trump's kind of detain first, ask questions later, try and get them out of the country before they can appeal to anything, so we don't have to deal with it in the courts. That's not a good.
Yeah.
That's not a good strategy. That's not a good. It's not a moral strategy either. That's just not. It's bad.
Ian, are you aware of the SAVE program?
Can you spell out what that's an initialism
I
for?
don't
Because
even
that's
I don't
used to
even know what it
pieces
stands
of
for, but
legislation.
it is used to check immigrants as they are being booked. And it is a requirement for all law enforcement agencies to use the SAVE program to verify a immigrant status, that is alien verification.
I mean, I can tell you from experience that law enforcement in multiple cities in which I've lived, I split time currently between Austin, Texas, and New York City. In each of those cases, when I have been a witness of a crime of somebody, I've said, look, have you actually taken a look at this person? Do we know who this is? Have you checked their legal status? And I've been told, no, our department does not allow us to reference immigration in any way in our duties. So the SAVE Act may be the law, but it's not being enforced when it comes to Austin Police Department.
You might check to see, because I believe all law enforcement
No,
agencies
that is what the
required.
law says.
When
But what individual officers are being told by their supervisors is that they are in sanctuary cities and that they don't have to follow that law, or in fact will face retribution if they do follow that law.
Well, they usually run the fingerprints through a system of some sort. If they do not, and that person is someone who is a criminal alien, they are going to be in big trouble, and that's
Well,
and that's the reason why this was
quite a
put.
few things to
This
begin
is
with. That requires them to actually be booked and not
booked
just allowed to be
exactly.
released.
Exactly. Once they are booked, and if someone is arrested for a charge and they are booked, now they can be released the next day, but they are supposed to run that through the system, and immigration will put a detention order out on it. And you can research this.
So how
I
is that
don't
order
I
enforced
hold on, hold on,
if they're
hold on,
released?
hold on. I don't know what you were told at Austin. I don't know what their process is, but I'm telling you, this is how this is how it's written to be done. And I know they do it in my little town where I'm from. I know they do it in a little town in Arkansas where there is a large number of Marshallese immigrants. Well, they're not really immigrants, but they're treaty people. And
Okay.
so I do
I
know
gotta
that
go to
that is
bed. Thank you for
done.
letting me outpost.
Thank you,
Have a
Ronald.
good one.
I'm following you.
Have a good one.
Thank you. I followed you back. Thank you. I need it out of there. I'm not interested in the fucking Sanctuary City talk. Not right now. I haven't done enough reading on that. Yeah, the one dude was cool. The one dude was not cool. But hey, you know, it is what it is.